Yes, I'm fine. I've been going into. You guys should see my internet history. Today my focus has been numerology. So. Okay, no problem. That's pretty much. Well, welcome to Lorelines. Which episode was that? 137. You said something. Yeah,
How
we
dare
have
you
a
not look at
date
the
for.
screen? Okay, I'm good now. I'm good. So
Okay,
my
then
mic
you guys
was not
go on.
on, and I went through the whole thing. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is episode 137 of Lore Lines. Last week we had talked about just random stuff while we wait for any announcement for Live Later 86. We did get that date. It will be on March 14th. So that means that,
Yes.
yes, exactly. So that means 11 days before the patch, which will be on the 25th. So very excited for that. Very excited to see what trailer has to offer because per the story arc structure that 14 likes to use, 7.2 is when things are going to start ramping up. So very
Hmm.
excited for that. I still remember Shadowbringers 5.2, I believe. Yes,
Yeah,
where we were like, oh my god, what's going to happen next? Because I remember 5.1 was kind of dry. I remember it was
it was
it was okay.
decent.
Yeah, it was okay. But it wasn't like amazing. But it did do a lot of setup, and I feel like that's a lot of what happened here in 7.1. So really excited to see where they go with this. Meowth, how have you been this week?
Like I said before, I've been working on a massive project that we can't reveal yet, but we're working on that. Uh, and on another note, today I have been pouring through more of my weird references and cross-referencing stuff for this story arc, and today's topic was numerology. So,
Okay. Why numerology? If you don't mind me asking.
uh, So I've been looking into into triads because this story arc seems. I mean, if you're going to make a story arc about finding things about Asem, you're inevitably going to have to include first Hades and naturally Hades as well. So I've been kind of like researching triads. One of them, I mean, I have a few that you can use, but I was also looking in terms of what numbers mean, symbolically speaking. I mean, I know a bit enough about that. But I want to refresh my memory because usually there's a lot of information I have to keep track of, over the course of this, I spotted in when it comes to to single number digits, which is 1 to 9. Um, I spot a pattern in terms of what each number means, and I could match each number and its meaning and the themes with its number of the expansions of 14. so,
Okay.
so so I was like, okay, I'm going to make a note of this, and then again, of course, uh, going by the numbers of 1, 2, and 3, which is what you make of number three as
Hmm.
the triad between As and Hades and Hythlodaeus. It was about assigning which number would be which one. It was also because we were discussing. I was looking about the whole thing about the four masks in living memory, the three that represent the unsundered, unlikely the one that represents Asm, and we were thinking about the whole concept of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So it was a whole it was a whole exercise of trying to match themes and here and this and that. I'm not saying that it's what it means, but but you can match them actually.
Interesting. I have to ask. What about zero? Aside from the fact from the
Zero.
obvious character named Zero in the game.
Zero is such an important theme because you're going to have me ramble about esoteric things, but in Tarot Arcana, in Tarot, the different numbers of. So this has been a long time pet theory of mine, that every single number the Final Fantasy is actually based on the themes of the corresponding Roman numeral of the Tarot Arcana. Uh, in recent times, recent meaning Final Fantasy 6, 7, more or less that, you can actually draw up a proper match. Maybe it wasn't so much for the first Final Fantasy, but it started to become a thing.
That's interesting
If
because
this,
every Final Fantasy game definitely has a theme that it's built around. And I don't know what the theme for Tarot is for 6, but I know what the theme of 6 is.
Anis,
Love.
so the sixth arcana of Tarot is the lovers.
That makes sense. So okay, that's right. So yeah, the theme of 6 is very much love, and I don't mean like romantic love. It's all kinds of
No, it
love,
doesn't
like
have to.
uh, love of friends, love of family, love of your romantic love, all of it.
It is the same in 13 is also the same. It's more like in 13 takes it to the because the theme of 13 is the bonds between humanity and the core of it being love. It's like this universal love. Then you have then you have the cast separated in pairs, with the exception of Saz and Dash, as they're father and son, but the rest are their own individual pairings.
See, I
Put
would
together.
pair. I know Fang and Vanille, but I always pair Saz and Vanille. Just because of that one scene. And like that's some deep love right there. It's like
But yeah, and zero, the tarot of zero, the number zero, is the fool. The fool is, it doesn't really mean being stupid. It's actually more like the ignorance of someone who's searching, who's starting a journey, which is something that you could apply to the concept of asm.
I mean, yeah, that
And
makes sense because whenever you try and do something you've never done before, you're gonna be a fool until you learn.
yeah, that's what it means basically. It's this ignorance in search of the unknown. That's why if you pair the concept of the tarot arcana with the fool, the tarot arcana of the fool with alchemy, that makes sense as for why Asim's mask is black, because in the alchemical process, the black process represents this ignorance that of the beginning. It's like uh, all the unwanted detritus that you have in your mind that you're going to eventually get rid of, but it also represents the potential of becoming the final step. It's basically your potential. You're right now like this cluster black of ignorance, but you're going to become to become the philosopher's stone by the end of the journey. It's going to be a journey of self discovery and self enlightenment.
Yeah.
So that pairs with the fool with Asen's black mask, which technically in alchemy symbolizes ignorance, but it's the good ignorance. It's the ignorance that you are willing to learn more.
Yeah. So
So
I wouldn't even call that ignorance. It would just be like the knowledge of your ignorance. Because I think ignorance kind of denotes an unwillingness to admit that you're ignorant.
hmm,
But I think the knowledge of being ignorant would be more akin to wisdom.
yeah,
So, but I
it's basically like
yeah.
it's basically like Socrates. I only know that I know nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And AC Gears and Arms says, pretty sure the seats of the convocation are numbered by the zodiac.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I agree.
With the only exception that so Assam is kind of like the outlier because there are only 13 symbols in the zodiac, 12 if you want to keep it to usual standards. Japanese like the Japanese and the Japanese Final Fantasy team likes to use the 13th of Yuku's I don't know. They like it, so it's almost like this secret,
It's fine.
this
They
this
like it.
secret.
They just think it's neat.
I mean, it exists in certain astrology charts. You can add Ophiuchus, so it's like, let's go with 13, with 13 not 13 symbols. The sun is, I mean, it's a star, so you can apply to the zodiac, and even, and I mean, yeah, in evolution myth, the sun is important, of course. In evolution lore, the sun is really important because it is the sun that moves through the whole, all of the constellations and the zodiacs during the year and all that stuff. But at the same time, if you look at the Evil is Alliance logo, you see that they actually form a sun. They actually form the sun together. In fact, strictly speaking, in the Evil is Alliance logo, if you think of Asm Sigil, the signs should be in the circle. The sign of Ophiuchus should be in the middle, like in Asm Sigil, it should be the middle spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all together, they would make Asm Sigil. So at the same time, Asm is a concept of 14, but at the same time is the concept of 0.
Right.
Is everything, everyone,
and
but at the same time is no one.
Yeah, and I can see that. And AC Gears says, in game and in the Encyclopedia Eorzea 3, they refer to the 14th and 13th seats, respectively. But I would say that they're kind of like not like Alpha and Omega, but they're kind of set apart because they're not the standard seats. You have Elidibus, which is the mediator, and the emissary who is looking to strike balance between different sides, and then Azem, who is the outsider. So they're kind of like set apart from everything else. So I would say you have the zodiac, and then you have, and this is a terrible example, but like the Earth and the Moon. So you can't have a zodiac if you don't have a starting point, and then the moon is there. Or the sun, either one.
All of these things, they're also, to me at least, they're so fascinating to go into. You should really, if anyone is spying on me and my internet history, they likely think I'm a madcap weirdo, which I am, but that's to be fair. But
Okay. Tetsu brings up something. I think it's super sus that you can't see the sun from the moon. Absolutely agree. And this has driven me nuts since we got to the moon. That literally, if you look around in the skybox, there is no sun. There's lighting and direction, but where the sun should be, you never see it.
I know exactly why I think about that.
We have 2 light sources on the moon? Oh my god, now you're driving me nuts. What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So you see, if you go to them, I actually tried this with.
All right, you know what? Let's do that. Let's go to the moon.
Right.
Yes, of course I'm in the game. All right, let's go to the moon. The shadow was on Earth. Don't call. Yeah, that's true. The phases of Earth. But I wouldn't say that's 2 light sources on the moon. But it's just something that annoys the living shit out of me.
There's 2 sources. You'll see.
Yeah. So right now, shadows. So the light should be over here. But the light for the Earth is over here. Or not the Earth, but the planet. There's thank you.
So you see, the actual shadow source that you're seeing, it comes from more or less to the left, to the light blue pillars.
Yeah, I could see it like right here, which I guess kind of corresponds to what we're seeing there.
It doesn't really match. Right now it's illuminated, that part, but it changes the shadow of the shadow of a Theris, so don't
Yeah, no,
really
it rotates. So
about that.
I would say the shadows on the moon they follow the 24-hour cycle, but this follows a 30-day cycle.
No, no. They actually don't. The shadows remain the same, static. I believe me, I tried
Really?
because using manners that you shouldn't use in game. But I tried both day cycle and month cycle, and the same. The shadows are stationary.
Wow, I hate
So,
that. I hate that a lot.
but now, so now you go, so you see this that's where the shadow should come from,
Right,
there.
right here.
But if you go to the Watcher's Palace
Hmm.
and fly up to one of the round golden surfaces that decorate it, you'll
Okay.
see that actually there's a different light source that you can see coming from a different
Oh,
part.
you're gonna drive me nuts with this. Like, what is the secret of the moon?
No, I don't think it's the moon per se,
Also,
but
these rocks are either ridiculously big or the moon is really small. Okay, here we go.
see?
So it's still kind of in the
The-
same direction.
but in a sense, but there's no light source from there.
Oh, I
And
see what
it's
you
a
mean. The reflection, which means
Mhm.
it should be up there.
Yeah, but there's nothing.
Yeah, and there's another one over here. Oh, that's maddening. Why would they do this?
No, I think it's most deliberate.
I honestly I don't, but it still drives me nuts. And there's three of them. One, two, three. So there's tri-lighting, and I get that they're going for, yes, the sun technically should be over here, but it's always driven me nuts that you can't see it. Why is there no sun here? It would be the easiest thing in the world to add. I don't know. This is just something that bothers me.
Unless
No, no. I know what you're gonna say. I don't go that way. I do not attribute this to malice. I attribute it to uh, time crunch and oversight. Oh, yeah. It's because, as Zen says, it's because of the warrior of light from the source. You are the light source. Yeah, I can see. So the sun on the world should be over here, judging by that. But here, the sun should be right here. So here
if it
and
was,
here.
however, if it was an oversight by now they should have corrected it, which tells me that it's not.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, have you ever paused to notice how weird the sun is if you look at it
I mean, I try
from
not to, like in game or in real life.
in game?
Oh, um, so no, but I know the moon kind of rotates with the camera, which is kind of bizarre.
That was not exactly what I mean. Let me actually, let me try to find you a good shot of it.
I mean, we
Uh,
can always go somewhere in game and look at it. So
I mean, yeah,
it's
but
7 a.m. The sun's coming up. Let's. Do you want to go to the source or the first?
it doesn't matter. It looks the same in
All right,
both.
I'm gonna go to the first. Lack of sun
I'm
is
going
probably
to.
so they don't have
I'm
to talk about the effect of
still
unprotected
going.
stellar radiation. I love that. But I don't think stellar
Well,
radiation is really an issue considering there's
I
air
share
in
I
space.
share the shot for you in share a shot for you in live
Okay.
chat though.
All right. Let me take a look. Yeah, that looks perfectly normal, actually.
Mm-mm.
I
I don't.
understand what you're saying. So, yeah, that's a lens effect.
It's that's it's weird. I mean, it could be just a design choice, but the fact that it resembles like the hexagon shape,
Hmm.
it's almost like the wheels of a, like it's basically a wheel. It's
I know where you're going with this. That the sky is artificial and everything we see is fake. Yeah, and there's a halo effect, which you get from the moon too in real life.
yeah. But you know what? I stand for it, and if it turns out that I'm right, you're not going to be hearing the end of it from me.
No, and you know what? That's totally valid. If you're right, I will gladly. So this shot is from Ilmeg, so I'm gonna go to Ilmeg. If you are right, I will gladly admit it. But until I see it, I'm not bending on this one.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right, here's Ilmeg. There's the sun. Clear as day, right there in the sky.
That was a nice day to go to
It was a
Olmec.
perfect day for
See,
Ilmeg.
this is why when I have to check weather things, I have to resort to questionable means.
Yeah, but I mean, questionable means committing crimes. So
Listen, if I hadn't committed crime, so to speak, I wouldn't have realized because, in Shadowbringers, when they gave us the ability to fly, it tends to be after we have dealt with the everlasting light, right? It's like the last quest of the area. And that's when they give us the last ethereal current.
Right.
So usually you're not thinking of exploring the sky or seeing things around the sky when you're not usually going to fly around beneath the everlasting light. I committed crimes to check on that.
you couldn't just wait.
No.
Hey, the sun is out. There we go. All right, so here's the hexagon
go.
pattern we were talking about. But
Ta-da!
yeah, I think this is just an effect.
It's weird, nonetheless.
What in God's name are we talking about?
Who knows? What's up, Ayumi?
So you mean we're talking time fuckery?
We haven't even gotten there yet. He left.
See, that was the exact effect I was aiming for.
No, literally, someone said there's no sun on the moon, so I was like, well, I'm in game. Let's go to the moon. And then Meowth started on this whole the sun is a hexagon, the world is a lie, and I don't.
Why are we spreading false rumors? The sun is a hexagon? Hold on, let me go outside.
Not the real sun. It's a lens effect.
And it sounds like fake news.
Just stop. Just stop. So
Hi,
I know.
everyone. I'm obsessed with Monster Hunter Wilds right now, so that's why I haven't been on.
So Meowth.
You can go back to play. I mean,
So Meowth,
I
have
don't think
you
I can't multitask.
have you taken a look at the difference between Hubble and JWST's lens effects, taking photos of stars?
kind of.
That's a no. Okay. So when you look at stars in Hubble, they have 4 spokes that come out. But if you look at them
Right.
in JWST, the new telescope they put up there, they're hexagons.
Right.
So this actually, to me, looks like it's being more accurate.
It's still kind of weird to me that we are supposed to be looking at something in the sky through the effect of a lens, but okay.
I mean, the camera is a lens. You're not, yeah. But this is something. This is something I attribute to lens effects because when you look at the sun in real life, you don't get a lens flare either. But here's the lens flare.
No, because if you try to look at the sun in real life, you're likely to get your eyes burned.
Yes, exactly. So, but this lens flare effect doesn't happen. No, your eyes just burn.
You
Exactly.
get the you get the same effect by looking at a computer for too long. It's literally just the same. Well, the computer has what's called a blue light effect. It's a kind of radiation, a slight radiation radiating off of a screen, and it's similar to what the sun produces, radiating down to the planet itself. And so prolonged exposure to looking at a computer is the same as staring at a sun for a prolonged period of time, which is why they tell you to wear computer glasses when looking at a computer for an extended period of time and sunglasses when going out in the sun.
I hate that. Old cathode ray monitors could burn your eyes too. I mean, they could burn themselves because it's just shooting radiation into your eyes. At least LEDs don't do that.
Take this from a former optometric technician, okay? I know what I'm talking about.
So is that why when I'm at work and staring at a computer for 12 hours a day, I look at something
Your
else
eyes
and
will hurt.
nothing is in focus for like 15 minutes?
Yes. As your eyes kind of readjust and focus.
So Meowth is the sun right now. I'm going to give the sun to a Yumi. Here we go.
I would not attribute Meowth to the sun.
No, not at all. The sun's not moving. This is as close as I can get it. So is the source...
recommended amount of time you should be spending at your computer staring would be about 2 hours, and then take 15-minute break is what is recommended. Okay. But we're all nerds, and we're all not irresponsible. So continue. Do what you want.
I will. So the source is the crystal, and the reflection. I wouldn't say they're facets so much. They're a little bit. So like if you broke the crystal into surfaces,
you described it as wavelengths, basically.
Yeah,
I
it's
recall you
wavelengths.
being so happy when you had that theory,
because
and
it
basically
fits.
And then the Charlayan book pretty much confirmed your theory.
That's how it works. It's it wasn't Charlayan propaganda. I just put it together. It's just the shards are basically different wavelengths.
Cover on propaganda.
Yeah.
It's still Charlayan propaganda, but usually the things that are actually the truth are under lock and key in their vaults. That's the thing.
Yeah. Aka says they never tried to do Palace of the Dead on Warrior from 1 to 100, 1 to 200 in one sitting. Never.
Wow.
Did not spend 18 hours doing that without a break. Meowth, is the sun like that baby from Teletubbies? I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm not going to dignify that with an answer. But Meowth might.
I prefer the Nicolas Cage version. Just him coming up over the hill.
Wow.
I don't really like being the sun. I prefer to be the shadows.
Well, too bad you're the sun right now, so enjoy it.
Sad. I don't like the spotlight.
Let me just... there we go. You're like a holy painting right now.
You're the Mother Teresa.
Hang Meowth in a church.
Ave Maria.
Oh God, who's posting stuff in Discord? God. What do you want? Oh no, it's not you guys. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Carry on. Meowth with God rays. Let's go.
I have become Ultima Fury.
Oh Jesus. Yeah, well, okay. Or sorry. Oh Meowth. So, we had talked about Live Letter 86 being announced for the 14th. What are we expecting to see? Besides a trailer.
Damn, I was going to go for that. I expect some clarification on what's going on behind the scenes in Solution 9. Okay. I expect a little bit more hints.
Yeah, same. If not straight out explanation, because I remember, and I talked about this earlier in 5.2, Elidibus kind of laid everything out for us in 5.2, and it wasn't until we resolved it in 5.3 that it concluded. But by that point, we already knew what was up. Yeah, trailer. Dang it. So that's
There were
kind of
so many things though that we got in 5.2 that so far has not been addressed directly. So that's another thing.
like what?
Like, right, the whole thing with Heidelin's Call, which is basically a radio broadcast, which immediately snags you the moment you awaken to the echo for one reason or another, which could be her doing, could be just because I don't know you've watched Star Shower or a black mage has casted the LB2 on you, but 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 that's the only thing they left it at when it was actually treated as a big revelation back then. And later on we never got any resolution on that, except there is one thing that you can match to the concept of a radio broadcast, and that's the towers. So going from that, and especially now that we mentioned that Ueyawata's research station, has structures that do resemble the architecture, the very inert architecture of the towers. Well, I am expecting threats going on that direction.
So let me ask you this. So in towards the start of Endwalker, before Endwalker proper dropped, the towers pop up. How did Fandaniel make the towers?
We have no fucking idea.
Yeah, because
Charlatan propaganda.
Charlatan propaganda, exactly. Because we know that the Sundered Asians don't really have creation magic. It's just the Unsundered that do.
No.
So
they suddenly appear out of nowhere.
Did he have an army of people already pre-built them, and he's just like, all right, now lift them up from under the ground? What is that? What the Telophoroi was?
He had a.
And then we never hear from them
gotcha
again.
Pull. It was a gotcha pull.
Yeah, it was a gotcha pull. He pulled 6 5-stars in a row. It just it bothers me thinking about it, because it just makes no sense where these towers came from.
Paid for the. He built a wall, and no, I won't make any more.
No, please don't. Please don't.
Shush! So, I don't think this is related to Allegan construction, because the towers don't really match Allegan construction. Don't really match Guardian construction either.
Yeah.
That instance, I think we mentioned this back when the patches were announced, that the Orsian Alliance was immediately like, it seems to be Garlean made, and I'm thinking, where the fuck did you see the Garlean architecture?
Where in Garlemald is that from? I've never seen anything like that. Yeah, I remember that, and I was like, you're joking, right? Now. Yeah. Aka says something. Could it be something brought from the 13th, actually? And so that actually opens up a possibility that I hadn't considered. Not so much the 13th, but that these were already pre-constructed in the void, and he just kind of opened up a portal and plopped them down. That I could buy.
Or it could be, or technically it could. I mean, it depends on many things, but I suppose they could be brought from something, not necessarily the void, because I don't think it matches void architecture either. But they could be made in some other space, let's say. Yeah. And if you have the means to turn it or to break space, not unlike what happened with Solution 9, I guess. They could have been transported there, and it would look like they appear out of nowhere, but they actually were transported from a different dimension. Right now, we're dealing with different dimensions. That's the thing. Imagine they were made in the Walk of Echoes or something like that, and Preservation has a base on that in there. They would dominate the entire space-time.
I don't know about preservation, but I'm very curious to learn more about preservation.
It's the only thing right now I can think that would have access to time and space stuff.
Hmm.
So far,
yeah.
I mean,
I
we
mean,
don't know the extent of preservation.
Ellie brings up a good point that they actually remind them of the way the Crystal Tower appeared on the first, which was just suddenly they were there.
Yeah, but it came with a different, not just from a different world, but from a different timeline.
The towers?
No, the Crystal Tower. I mean, it's another tower, so you can drop.
Yeah, we're talking about the towers here. Ayumi, we're gonna say something.
I think Ayumi is enjoying the game.
I'm enjoying Monster Hunter.
Out there.
but yeah, there's many things from Shadowbringers that were left hanging, which is one of the reasons, personally, when we were given Endwalker, and as I understood Endwalker back then, it was so infuriating. Like, at first it's one of these things I was musing about the other day. It was this thing that I tried to convince myself that I had been satisfied, because I suppose a part of me didn't want to admit that it had been utterly disappointing. and because Endwalker is a roller coaster of emotions, it doesn't really give you time to think, which that's pretty much the intention. But when after I cooled down and patches came, I realized that the game was trying to make me swallow things that I was not having it. That really, really frustrated me, because I don't like to being, how do you call it, forced an opinion down my throat.
Well, that's nothing new. They've been doing that since Heavensward.
It depends. And Walker does it in a different level. But one of the things that annoyed me was that they didn't follow any fucking visible Shadowbringer thread. There was no narrative cohesion. We were discussing this the other day. And I was and I believed it would be bad writing, but it turns out that now in Dawntrail they're all coming back, and it's like, oh, they sold Dawntrail like, no, but it's a new arc and new story, and I go in and I went into Dawntrail, I realized this is Shadowbringer's continuation.
Well, that's still
new story.
That still fits the pattern, because when something's introduced, it usually takes 2 expansions to actually come back into the story.
Yeah.
And so that's why when, I see people say, oh, Dynamis had, nothing to do with the story, I
wait
until 8.0, because that's when it's due to come back into the story, is 8.0, not now. It's like, the Warriors of Darkness at the end of Heavensward, no one said, well, where did they go during Stormblood? They were just like, well, that was a pointless side quest that had nothing to do with anything. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there like, this is important. This is so important. It's gonna come back.
And effectively it came back, yeah.
Yeah, it did.
But the thing with Endwalker is that they had been basically selling Endwalker as the end of the arc, the end of Hydaelyn and Zodiac's story and the whole revelation and all, and yeah, it was the end of Hydaelyn rather, and Primal Zodiac, emphasis on
Heidi and Zeke.
But it's definitely not the end of this story. It's actually going into the bigger scope of the story. It's basically Act 2 of the story. Yeah. So this thing about new story, it's like bullshit. It's like, and this is so amusing, because if we're going into Final Fantasy 12 themes, then Endwalker is a false beginning. It's a false start. And I actually gave you in the script for the meta-narrative one the definition of the false start. And I wanted
please explain it, because the video hasn't been produced yet, and then you and Ayumi can talk about the 12 influences.
So it's a narrative device. It's a narrative story storytelling method. The full start is it gives you a
Before we
start of a
begin,
story.
before we
What?
begin, Meowth and I have opposing views on things. She believes in the meta narrative. I believe in the realistic perspective. So this is going to go both ways. Continue.
Excellent. I love it. I love it.
That's fair. That's how we keep ourselves grounded. So, a full start is basically not meta narrative. It's a narrative storytelling device in which you're given similar as a start of a story that looks like, oh, it's going to go in this direction, and then suddenly they shut the door on you, and it goes in a wholly different direction. 12 does this twice in the span of maybe half an hour. So, spoilers for Final Fantasy 12. Mute yourself if you don't want the spoilers for 12. The story begins with gives you the wedding between Ash and Rattler, and you're seeing Rattler as the protagonist, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be the main character. There's a war, the Emperor of Arcadia invades Nebudis, blah blah blah, and you're introduced into this cutscene, and then you're basically being introduced to Rattler in this cutscene, and
The Marquis.
And in the maybe 5 minutes later, he's killed by an arrow in battle, and you're like, okay, I suppose Rattler wasn't the main character in this. Then you start playing as, again, in Nebudis, as a boy named Rex. That's Van's brother. And you're starting, and you're thinking, so I guess this is actually our main character, this guy Rex. Maybe around 20 minutes later, he's killed by by a guy that it's supposed to be Bash, and that's when the story really begins with Van, which is the real. It's actually he's not actually the main character, but it's the player perspective character. So again, 12 does this twice in the span of 30-40 minutes. So that's actually what Endwalker is doing in a different way, but it was marketed to us, Dawntrail, as the new beginning, and Endwalker being the new story. It's actually not. It's a sequel. It comes from that. There's nothing new. It's just Act 2 of the story. So considering all the references we have strong to Final Fantasy 12 and number 12, it fits.
Thoughts, Ayumi?
So, I wouldn't go so far as to say, like, throwing 12 out there as an example is fair, because that was all Matsuno's idea and not Yoshi P's. Although I will say that Yoshi P is a fan of Matsuno's work, so that's not to say that he didn't take that idea from it. However, I wouldn't say that Endwalker is an example of 12's kind of narrative perspective. I wouldn't say it's that kind of storytelling. I'd say it's what they intended was with Endwalker was wrapping up and closing off and creating new plot hooks. I think they were more concerned and worried about where the story will end at and where the story will continue at, not with trying to misdirect the player. That's just me, though. However, I do have my thoughts on other things, because of, you've heard my opinions on the raids and such, and where those go. And those, again, fall under the whole they are setting up for the new arc while simultaneously closing off other arcs.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I don't think that realistically that we can attribute 12's meta-narrative here. I think that they have their own way of telling storytelling, and I believe it's inspired by Matsuno, not directly referenced by. If they did bring Matsuno on board, or if they did take notes from him, it would be a completely different story than what you think it would be, and there would be controversy surrounding it at this point. Dawn Trail would be a completely different story.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it makes sense. Question in the chat. Let me see. Is there something from Shadowbringers you expect them to bring over in 7.2 and onwards?
So, my thoughts on Shadowbringers and referencing it back. The difficulty in a overarching story over 10 plus years is that the longer it goes on, the more chances you have and the more dangerous it is to, when you go back and reach for those plot hooks, you run the risk of retconning things in other places. We saw this with Elpis. We saw this with, we'll say, like Stormblood, Shadowbringers, and even Endwalker. Dawn Trail brought this up too. Endwalker did a lot of this. Endwalker went back to Shadowbringers and tried to reach back and solve a few things, and it ended up retconning a few things. Dawn Trail did this and ended up retconning some things from Shadowbringers and Endwalker. But that is essentially normal when you have a long-spanning story. Books do this, media does this, games do this, everything. So, going forward, what I want to see from, what I think I'm going to see from Shadowbringers, I expect them to revisit a couple of things from the first. One of them being Eden. I don't think we've closed that out quite yet.
I agree with that.
And
that for me is the
think,
one big plot hook that's still outstanding.
I also think that we are going to revisit Reen and Gaia as well. One, they're beloved characters, and two, they have an importance in the story that can't be overstated. What they do with them, however, they have to kind of fit in with how they, perceive the characters back then. So let's say that they have Reen do something completely out of character, or Gaia do something completely out of character. That kind of goes or creates friction against what we knew them as in Shadowbringers, right?
Yeah.
So that goes against their personality, that goes against what we knew them as. So it kind of creates this uneasiness and confusion with the players. So that's why it's like, well, whatever you do with things, plot hooks in other expansions, you need to make sure that it lines up with who they are, who they were, what happened then, and make sure that it fits in with present day plot hooks, present day narrative, without skewing the story that you're trying to tell. And so far, they've done a semi-decent job of it. I won't fault them for screwing things up and here or there, but that's just me.
Okay. Another comment, the Asians that are remaining. So we have 4 that we know of, 2 that might be dead. And I believe the ones that are still outstanding are Halmarat and Pastrat. Ultima and Dudalifon were on Gaius' belt, but there's no confirmation that it was a proper kill. But that said,
the thing about those is that Gaius doesn't exactly know the proper method. He may have known, You may have read about it.
Depends. We don't know that much about
See,
what
here-
Gaius was on.
Here's my thought on the ones on Gaius' belt. I don't expect to see them, mostly because it felt like a way to just resolve them from a high level perspective and just get them out of the way so that they could move on from that.
What I'm thinking, and this is again a retcon perspective here, in this, because I want them. I'm thinking they're going this route, because when you move a new arc forward, you want to finish up as many plot hooks that are left over as possible, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking that what they're going to say here is that, yes, Gaius killed him. Yes, they're gone. How did he do it? Well, he studied or looked up how the Warrior of Light did it and created something similar. Like a prison similar to an Orosite crystal.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, would be a huge, retcon and wouldn't make sense, but it's their story and their way of storytelling, and how Gaius would do it, we'll just leave that up to our imagination.
And I have certain ideas, but it's just ideas. That's the thing.
That
like
would just be my take on it, what they would say about it.
Yeah, I don't expect them to ever explain it. I think they're just going to hand wave it.
Yep.
I don't either, because
yeah.
I think they want to move into a situation deliberately in which there are no Asians left. Not because they don't want to use them, but because there's a plot point as to what happens when there's no one left.
They don't
except
the problem with that is that Yoshi P specifically asked people to look up the remaining Asians.
I know. Yeah. I know. The thing is that I think this the thing I wanted to poorly surely express is that I am expecting a scenario in which we need the Asians, but there's no Asians left.
I mean, we're already there.
Proto one.
Yeah,
and that's Gaia.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're already at that point when they said without an Asian, it's impossible to determine what shard this is. That was it. So we're already to the point where we need an Asian, but we don't have one. The Asians as a plot device are done. Like, what I want to deal with now is the consequences of dealing with what they had already set into motion. So just sundered people carrying on what the Asians' will was without really having the same purpose in mind. Having that kind of propaganda directive of saying, this is what we need to do because, we need to preserve Alexandria, or, whatever the case may be. That's what I really want to see. On the other hand, I do want to see the ally Asian beyond Gaia, but the actual true Asian that says, hey, I know that we fought in the past. I haven't met you before, but we need to help each other.
We have yet to see that one, and yes, it's stereotypical, and yes, it's cliche, but I believe that we're going to run across them, whoever they are.
I hope it's Halmarant, and I hope he's just like in a field of smoke. He's just like, hey, man.
He's just tending to his flower garden.
I know. Just get Jeff Bridges.
No, I mean,
get Jeff Bridges to voice him.
I mean, suppose you know my opinion on all that, but I'm not sure if you want me to bore you again with it.
I would love to be bored again. Halmarant was plants. Plants and fauna. So the shrooms and weed. The dude, basically.
I don't know why. This is a running joke between all of us that I was like, man, he's really high all the time. He must be the dude from The Big Lebowski.
And it just stuck.
It stuck.
And Zent,
But you,
no, we gave all but the Crystal of Zem to Elidibus.
so in case you want me to bore you again, I think the point of this is that we are looking at our enemy from the wrong lens. We still stuck in the box of our enemy is the Asian, but I don't think that's the case. Our enemy doesn't come from the Asians. I believe that the enemy is everything we have set, and those that we believe our allies are actually
So-
the ones that we have to fight.
And I know we have kind of beat this to death, but again, what I really want to see is, yes, it's a retcon, but I think it would be awesome to say, okay, yes, the ASEAN plan would not have worked. They knew it wasn't going to work, but they still carried forward with it anyway. Why? Because of
they thought it was the best idea at the time.
No. Because I want to see that there was another outside influence manipulating them, and all three of us know what that is, at trying to rejoin itself to consolidate power. That's what I want to
I
see.
don't think that's not the angle, I think, but I do believe that there were infected forces
Yeah.
in that aspect.
not-
Not just, I don't think just La Habrea, because La Habrea had to rejoin himself
Right.
and put the corruption inside of him. But I'm also looking really, really strongly at Hermes, Van Daniel in particular. Not just because what he was already like the traitor, like La Habrea in a sense was an unwilling victim. I don't think Van Daniel was an unwilling victim.
No, not
I
at
don't
all.
think
Especially-
so either.
Especially because like we're thinking of, if you're talking Ultima, we have to bear in mind that she is the authority of the element of light, of holy.
Right.
So when it comes to light, you have to understand the colors that come with light, and the most important one is white. The color that Van Daniel is wearing the first time he appears to Cenas until 5.3 is white. He's wearing a white robe, and then he changes this into a deep pink, which is another of the colors associated with Ultima.
I would say it's magenta.
It's the same. Like in fact, the
Pink
colors
is
of
not magenta.
the same concept, and if you go to in fact, if we go by color coding, if you go to the two main hubs nations that we deal with, they are the colors associated with Ultima: the cyan for the Crystarium and the pink, magenta, whatever you want to call it, for Ilmor.
Fuchsia.
Well,
Zent says it's fuchsia.
I don't care. You know, I'm not going to listen. I could start going into that. I'm a fine arts graduate, but that's not the point. You understand which kind
We
of color
don't
I
need
organize?
to. We could
Throwing
just
credentials out there.
we could just go to Adobe Color and it'll tell us.
Yeah, well, but we have to bear in mind that Ultima is the force of the authority of light. So again, colors. When Van Daniel appeared to us, well, not to us, but to Xenos, until 5.3, he was wearing the white robe. So inevitably, anything white is going to make us think of Sin Eaters for good reasons, of course.
Zent.
or Elidibus. Or Vana.
At this point, I mean, when it comes to Vena, you and I and Yumi know what we found. So there's that. And in case of Elidibus, regrettably, I think his memory loss, considering the themes of memory, could be an effect of things as well. Regardless of if you think that he was affected directly by Ultima's influence, or it was just time doing its thing. But then again, we're also finding potential connections that tie Ultima to the concept of time, which would tie Zodiac with not primal Zodiac, but the real Zodiac with the concept of space, which is basically Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, but 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 yeah, um, there's a lot of themes you start pulling and finding, and it could be me high on my fumes, of course, but but you know
Could
my
be.
stance. I prefer to overthink rather than not think at all. Not think.
You always have your eyes pressed to the paper, and I'm surprised you can see it all.
That.
That's actually correct. You should see my notes. I'm
I
running.
know.
I'm almost.
So Meowth has a tendency to overthink and looks at the meta narrative so much that if you have her look at the script on a piece of paper, her face is planted against the paper, reading things, trying to look for the meta narrative, whereas normal people keep it away from their face and read it at a comfortable distance.
Aka says, would that explain why Vana refused to put down her white robe in the end, not just because she saw her duty unfinished, but because of devotion?
The problem with Vena, listen, if you are going to make me rant about Vena, we're going to be here a while.
Yeah, no, I don't want to hear this.
Same. So we don't
Let me
have to
find
rant
that
about
where-
Vana, but just this one aspect.
I don't want to find the gif where the Curia go off about Vana, okay?
Vana's a heretic.
No,
He is.
she is, and people. But again, people should bear in mind that there is a very good reason for why Vena is the main antagonist in Final Fantasy XII. Like, she is a villain for really good reasons, and I don't think
Vayne is the main villain, but Vana definitely is one of the bigger ones.
Vayne is the main villain because Vena chose him. That's the thing. If you recall, she chose him to be the dynasty
did,
that would
but-
rule over, who would rule, quote unquote, unite evil and stop all the worst, which is, in a sense, it's not really different.
Bring the
from
reins
Ralja's
of
idea.
fate back into the back into the hands of humans, basically.
Yeah, that was what she think. So that her intention doesn't mean that her method of achieving it was very much a dick move, which was basically, no, I'm going to give all the power to one person, and that person will rule over humanity in the name of mankind. That was basically the point of Vayne.
Vayne was an asshole. He really was.
Salvador Vayne. Yeah.
And House
He's
Salvador lives on.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great character, but he's complex. But he's still an asshole.
He is an asshole.
Yeah, he is.
But
He's charismatic, but also an asshole. Like,
Mhm.
he's likable, but an asshole.
And yeah, it's the charisma. He really has a lot of charisma as a character.
He does, and I do like him for that. But you can see it that he's charismatic. You can see why a lot of people like him, follow him, but you can also see why he needs to
Likeable?
be stopped. I like him as a character.
Yeah, no.
And if you were, let's say, a citizen of Rabanastre, and he came as consul initially,
Mhm.
and he said his giant speech, and he tried to make peace with you, would you
Probably, yeah.
you follow him? Would you believe him
Yeah.
initially?
Initially, yeah.
Okay.
He's very charismatic.
Therefore,
Yeah.
he's charismatic and he's likable initially, but you are blind to what he has
Been doing
behind
from
the scenes.
back
Yes.
then. Yeah. But
Anyways.
yeah, but that's the thing. that's one of the again. If I think every Evolution fan, when in 5.2 they read that the heart of Hydaelyn was an ancient name Vena, I think everyone flipped the hell out.
Oh, we did. I remember when that was revealed, we were like, oh shit. And that's what started us on that whole, oh, is Hydaelyn actually bad thing.
Well, when I sort of saw that, when I heard the name Vana, I immediately began asking myself, well, if Vana is here, if the name Vana is used, what are the Acuria going to be?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to be her followers? They didn't end up being her followers. They ended up just being the people who just followed her because she had, quote unquote, the right idea.
Right.
So there was no one trying to keep her in check, except for the Convocation, which ended up being similar to the Acuria.
Which the Convocation just basically dismissed her.
Yeah.
Not
actively
opposed.
Not even because the names of the Convocation doesn't even follow the name of the Curia. They're just named after.
When I say similar, I mean they decried her. They considered her
a heretic.
Yes.
Well,
I love that line, by the way.
That's even. I don't know if that's even the case though, in sense of decrying her a heretic, because by then.
Here we go again.
Here we go again.
Let's cast this aside.
All right.
Moving on. We could talk a lot about Evilise. In fact, we had 2 shows on it.
And a panel.
Mm-hmm.
And a panel, yes.
There's, I mean,
Where
we could just discuss Evilise on its own. And
I mean, that could be its own episode, and we'll discuss it in its own episode.
Yes.
Then there's another episode that we eventually will have to do, which is 13. And that reminds me,
there's a lot of 13 and 14. There really is, especially now.
That's why I was watching the videos you did about 13 and 14 that you did after you played.
Oh yeah.
I was rewatching that. I'm like, Cobb, you have to redo these things.
I mean, I've been waiting for 7.2 to finish the Type 01. And you know exactly why, because there's a lot that is right on the edge of being presented that has a huge impact. And if I release the video now without that information, I'm gonna want to just redo the video. So that's why I'm waiting.
Yeah,
Here's what I want to see in 7.2.
Okay.
So in 7.1, we were presented with a kind of like creepy Resident Evil type scenario where we go in and we find out what exactly Zoraija had been doing with.
Yeah.
With,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. those of you who have gone in Explorer mode and just kind of looked around a little bit deeper at
that
we're
dungeon
about,
is
it's kind of disturbing.
Kind of?
Really.
No.
It's horrific.
But that dungeon, I mentioned it. It's like it's peak narrative design.
What I want is, because they went down this dark path, because we initially thought, oh, Dawn Trail, it's going to be our quote unquote vacation story, and it flipped from base game, all sunshine, rainbows, smile, to 7.1. Okay, now we're exploring some dark themes. I would like these dark themes to continue, even though that Yoshi P said that the dark fantasy wasn't really working out for them. But I thought they did a great job of it with Shadowbringers. In fact, it was their most acclaimed expansion. So I know they can do a good job with dark fantasy. They just need to have more faith in themselves and their writers.
Yeah, dark fantasy is not the issue. It's how it's presented.
Right.
And how they follow through with it.
Besides, what Yoshi P says, it has to be taken with many grains of salt.
A truckload of salt.
I believe it when he's So I take it with a grain of salt when he's talking about the lore, not when he's talking about producer side of things.
I agree.
When
Yeah.
he's talking about like the professional side of things, because he is trying to temper expectations. That is how
That's fair.
he's avoiding doing the mistakes of 1.0.
That's
He would
fair.
rather not tank the
I
game.
suppose, in a sense, he could be referring to. Though my opinion on this is not. I mean, he may be referring to 16, but I personally think that 16 worked. But I think most people didn't really understand the message of 16. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it was the narrative storytelling. Maybe that's why. I understand. My understanding. I'm not very connected with the fandom, to be honest, but I've seen many people criticizing 16. Then you get into the videos and it's like, I thought this was plain clear enough to say, but maybe it's just me. Maybe he refers to that sort of dark
People
fantasy.
went into it with very high expectations. They liked Yoshi P. They wanted him.
They expected Heaven's
succeed in
Word,
creating-
basically.
Yeah, they expected Heaven's Ward.
Well,
They got the
it's
Heaven's Ward team. And what they got was a single player Heaven's Ward that wasn't quite their expectations.
I think what 16 suffered most was the expectations, because the game is really good, and you have to. And the story is. The story is good. Maybe it's not peak, but it's to me. I mean, at least I found it coherent and it makes sense. But then again, it's 16 is basically 13 and Tactics Advance put together. So I'm biased, but
I mean, the scenario writer was basically one of the game designers who worked under Matsuno on Tactics.
Yeah.
In Vagrant Story and others under it. So yes.
But I don't know, maybe it's that, but I'm surprised that he would say that dark fantasy didn't work when Shadowbringers relies on this dark fantasy
I was too.
Using the light, though.
And
so
that
it's
was
a
back.
Twist on,
That was back when Ishikawa was the main scenario writer, and then she got promoted after, I think it was after Heaven's Ward, or not after Heaven's Ward, after
Stormblood,
Shadowbringers. No, she was promoted after Stormblood to main scenario writer, and then I forget if she was promoted after Shadowbringers to lead scenario writer.
Yeah,
and then like oversaw others.
So now
I know she was in charge of Shadowbringers, but
she also took lead on Endwalker, but in Dawn Trail is when she became kind of the supervising editor.
Right.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing is, and this was from one of their 14-hour live letters. I think the last one. They described their writing process in that if someone has an idea, if one of their designers has an idea for the story, they say, okay, yeah, go ahead and write things.
Yep.
This does not include their main scenario writers. This applies to everyone on the team. If someone has an idea for the story, they throw it in because they know that, well, we can plot hook it later.
Yeah.
Which does end up creating problems down the line.
Yep. Especially because
still has to go through a vetting process, but that's where you end up having all of these random side quests, random main scenario quests that kind of go off in random directions because one of their designers said, well, what if I do this? What if I have an idea for this? What if the Warrior of Light goes off and fetches this or helps this person? Or what if we explore this? That is usually one of the level designers or background leads saying, can we throw this in? I had a great idea.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, can create some confusion sometimes, yeah, but no method is going to be fail proof. How do you call it?
Foolproof.
Foolproof. Whatever. So I think it's a good method because it's like,
you don't run out of ideas then.
Yeah, and also it gives room for the not main scenario writers to prove their mettle, if you will.
Which is
And,
where they found the main scenario writers for Dawn Trail. They
Yeah.
promoted a couple of their non-scenario writers to that position to write for Dawn Trail.
Right. Which it worked really well for Ishikawa. I don't think Dawn Trail is a failure. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, it was
No.
terrible." I don't consider
We
Dawn
won't
Trail
go
to be
into
a failure.
that, though.
Yeah, no, we're not going to go into that. We've talked about that ad nauseum. So
I know how I reacted when I played Dawn Trail. I know how Yumi reacted because we were the first ones in the server that finished Dawn Trail.
We won't go into that either. But anyways, back on topic.
Which
7-2.
topic? We're kind of bouncing topics.
7-2, because we were talking about 7-2.
Yeah.
What did I like to see? So again, what I'd like to see is the story kind of go off in a darker turn. I'd like to see it kind of go on the Resident Evil path and explore some, let's say some body horror, some twisted themes.
Yes.
That would be
And
awesome.
I know some people don't have the stomach for it, but I believe that, the game already has a T rating, and it's pushing that T rating.
It's almost them.
No, but that's definitely a theme. Again, when they said that dark fantasy was, I don't know how
it's
they
not
voiced
something
it,
that they're used to or that they want to continue.
and I'm like,
That's
that
disappointing.
was exactly what one of the things that skyrocketed Shadowbringers to what it is.
Oh yeah, people still have reaction videos. They're still posting reaction videos to Tisleen.
I think it has to do somewhat with what happened after 16's release, because it was hit or miss with, again, a lot of people. Again, that was a dark fantasy game. In Japan, I don't think it's either in Japan or like EU or US. It didn't do quite as well as Square Enix hoped it would be.
Yeah.
So they took it as, well, dark fantasy doesn't quite work as well as we thought, and they scrapped that idea of continuing it. But looking back to Shadowbringers, I know they can do it. They just can't continue with that kind of dark fantasy.
Right.
They have to go to a different kind.
They're going dark with Yuya Wata. It's like that thing. That's I was there. It's like, this is disturbing. There's a lot.
And
there.
also too, how many sci-fi fans do we have in here? There's a lot of. I know Coveron's one, and I know Zent's one.
More fantasy than sci-fi, but
I know. I would like to see them also kind of explore the darker side of sci-fi too.
Same.
Because
Big same.
We know that Sphene is a kind of like a android cyborg type thing. We know that Solution 9 is a kind of automated city almost. So I would like to see them kind of explore that automation and see whether or not, like, Sphene is an automated type leader, whether when she dies another one is generated in her place, and that if it is self-perpetuating, and that just in case the point is reached where Sphene is eliminated, I don't think she falls ill at any point, but in the event that she is taken out, eliminated, dies, another one is generated from the source Sphene, so that the throne is never empty from that Sphene.
Yeah, I think, though, with the Sphene that we have now, not the one that popped up in living memory, that there is some kind of controller behind it. Probably someone preservation, I don't know. Because there is that kind of, okay, she recognizes us as a threat and is trying to maneuver herself into pushing us out. Meanwhile, the actual Sphene has been released, quote unquote, or regenerated, I don't know, and is kind of trying to figure out what's going on. And I say actual Sphene, but I don't mean like the real Sphene. I mean the original base program that was originally transferred from the living Sphene into living memory.
I mean, for now, they already pushed. Right now, after 7.1, they have effectively already pushed Oblivion, which is the group, into the back room, because the people were not having us around. So they already pushed that. What are the odds that at some point they're going to push us entirely from Everkeep into the
back into the cave with you?
Into the cave.
You're not welcome here anymore.
You thought that Solution 9 got its own consciousness or program just to go for solutions like an AI. Essentially, that's what Sphene does.
Yeah, that's Sphene.
Initiates her will towards the people, but she herself, like I said, I believe that when she is terminated or eliminated, the people that control the system, preservation, have installed a program to where she is self-perpetuating. It is self-cycling to where she is constantly on the throne no matter what. No matter what happens, there will always be a Sphene.
Yep.
This is so proto-falsy, Adam.
There must always be a Sphene on the throne. And that's what the program is generated or programmed to do.
It's really academia, really. It's academia 400.
I mean, kind of, except it would be if Hope was killed and then the Falsi made their own Hope and stuck him in there and been like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the duplicates, Cobb, the duplicates.
I know.
And Oblivion has the ability to program any kind of personality into her. We saw that actually when we were standing there and she gave us that wicked smile and then the display started.
You said Oblivion. You meant preservation.
Preservation. Sorry.
Naked malevolence, right there.
Naked malevolence. Yes. As we looked at Sphene and the displays started bugging out.
Yeah.
They also sent that message or the reprogrammed signal to all of the Neo-regulators too. To reprogram their memory.
Which I loved because my first thought
it's in all the regulators, but
when I first saw the regulators and I was like, oh, it can take memories out. My first thought was, if it can take them out, it can put them in. And I am very excited for that, because now we're getting into exploring something that I'm really interested in, which is if you have the combination of physical ether, soul ether, and memory ether, and that creates a person. Now you start removing pieces of that. So we've removed the body, and we have all three split into three. What constitutes someone actually being alive in that case? Like, what part of that makes it so that you can say this person's alive?
It was it's the same thing with Endwalker too. It was the same concept of the final days with Endwalker, because you have the living, the dead, and then the reincarnation. What the final days did was it removed the soul part where they couldn't be reincarnated, and it's essentially an incredibly fast apocalypse, because the living would die, they wouldn't go back to the ethereal stream,
right? So
they could be reincarnated. So you're again removing a part of that equation, so they wouldn't become a living person again.
Yep.
I think we're facing the same situation at the core of it, that every single threat is to the ethereal sea, to the cycle, but in which Meteion's aim was to basically make everyone die and not be reborn.
Die. Right. Yeah.
I think in this case it's having everyone live, not die, and therefore not reincarnate. It's a different type of unlife, but it's...
Well, I mean, that's exactly what happened in the Void.
Yes, but I meant in artificial. And basically what you would have, if they actually achieve this concept of eternity, in which no one dies, therefore there is no death, but then again there's no life, no real life either. It's an empty ethereal sea. In the other case around, it would be a full ethereal sea because no one could be able to be reborn.
Right, which
In
is
this
what...
case, it's an empty one.
Which, honestly, that's what the first should have been. It should have been because of the stagnation that no one could be born on the first. So there was no new life, and exactly like Lightning Returns, people should not have aged, but they could still die.
Yeah, but it wasn't a complete flood of light, so I can get why it wasn't
Right,
made
but,
like that.
But it should have had that kind of influence on the world. Like, that should have been
However,
a thing.
I'm expecting a situation like that for 8 point.
No, we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, we are
But
almost at
it's
time for today.
See, there's no problem at not having things. We have
We have
things.
plenty
We always
to talk
have
about.
things. And people say that there's nothing to talk about
there's a
with
ton.
Dawntrail.
Yeah. And yeah, Yumi, that's why I consider Medion probably the worst villain in the game. Because, yeah, the Ascians killed people, but the souls recycled, and they were reborn, and they were fine. And so you kind of have to rethink what the definition of alive is in this game, and what the definition of death is, where Medion actually killed people, so they never came back. So for me, that's way worse.
Nothing.
Yeah. So that is horrific to me, and that's why I didn't like Medion.
It's so interesting because we faced in previous arc a force, though I still think it's. But anyways, relations and connections aside, let's go with the simple way of. In the first arc, we saw a force trying to erase life, right?
Yeah.
What we're seeing now is a force trying to erase death.
Yeah.
But life and death go hand in hand.
Yep.
So
You can't have one without the other.
So I think Meowth and I talked about this. If one of our villains represents nihilism and death, what if we come across someone who represents hope and life?
Mm-hmm.
Or what if they're the same person?
Yes.
So we have, fake Sphene representing basically undeath, and then real Sphene who wants her people to live, but not pretty much be enslaved. Which, I get it, hope and life for us, but we bring an awful lot of death to be hope and life.
Yeah, but there's a certain force of light that is already stated to want to wear our crown.
Yeah, I know.
So
I'm just saying, I think it would be interesting, personally, if both sides were represented by the same identity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I would also like to see, too, not just in 7.2, but going into the future, them kind of exploring the possibility of either friends turning on us or us turning on them.
That would be good. That would be awesome.
Because we have
we don't have time to get me into that, but
we can talk about that next time. We can put a
Yes.
pin in that for next time. But I will say on that on a wish list of things that I want my Amnesia arc for the Warrior of Light. Which
body possession.
I don't want my Amnesia arc. I want my Warrior of Light to realize the truth and be like, I'm going to burn all of this down.
I mean, we
kind of
never
already
truly got
did.
our final days. We got a localized final days here, there, here, there. I was expecting a world-spanning calamity.
I found the final days to be very underwhelming. I'll be very honest. You go to Ishgard and you see people transforming, and I'm like, oh man, it's everywhere. But it wasn't. It like they had isolated incidents, but it wasn't like society is unraveling, which is what it should
We
have
only
been.
we only saw it in two particular zones, which are interesting from a purely from a symbolical what they represent.
Hmm.
They, which is Thavner,
Yeah.
and Thavner represents. One day, I will go into what Thavner represents because it's so tied to Zodiark, not Primal Zodiark, but the real one.
Right.
And Garlemald, which is a nation quite tied to an Asian. So seeing that, it's so interesting as it's the only two places in which you see the final days really come in full.
Yeah.
And by the way, did you ever realize that in the map when the first when the final days start to happen and cover Thavner, the effect is black a blotch of black ink.
Hmm. Yep.
Who is tied to ink?
I will say I find it very interesting how two areas that supposedly have the thinnest ether in the currents above Etheris are so different. I like Garlemald makes perfect sense. It should look like that. There's not a lot of ether there. The people there can't manipulate it. Like it's just very desolate. Meanwhile, Thavner is bursting with life and ether, but somehow it's thin. So that just
Garlemald is not so barren. Remember that it's ice and frozen over, but beneath that there's a lot of ceruleum. And
yeah,
ceruleum
I
is
know,
really
but I mean, there's not a lot of
important.
life.
Yeah, not in that specific sense, but it's an interesting thing. And considering that this in the lecture of the studium, the Charlian guy, the head of the studium, used black ink to represent erasing memory.
Yeah.
My understanding right now, I could be wrong, of course, but my understanding right now that the intention is an attempt to erase those two locations, Thavner and Garlemald. But this is my take on right now, where things may be there maybe have been a deliberate intention.
Right. All right.
But yeah,
Yes, sir.
there's a lot. There's a really a lot.
Well, that about does it for today. We are out of time, but I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Yumi, Meow, thank you for hopping in and chatting about what might be coming up in 7.2. We can continue this next week, and then the week after we'll be talking about the live letter and doing trailer analysis. So very excited about that. Yes. We'll go frame by frame, and that always usually takes up an entire episode.
Also, if you start next week during cast, and next week and the next one during cast, hearing explosions on my end is because it's my local holiday week.
So
here in Valencia.
it's your turn
like to blow up things.
Your turn to declare war on the sky.
Yeah. We like fire and explosions. We celebrate spring this way.
How American.
I wouldn't go that far.
All right, everybody. Have a great one, and we will see you next week. Take care.
See you next
See
week.
ya.